Hey everybody, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're back for another Nebraska football chat, a Nebraska Cornhuskers chat, I should say, since we do try to talk about more than just the football team. But it was a rough night last night for basketball, but we've got a lot to talk about, in the transfer portal. So make sure that you guys hop in here for the conversation, and if you haven't done so already, make sure that you guys hit the subscribe button on the channel so you don't miss any of our future content, any of our future podcasts or chats or any of the other stuff that we have going on. So go Big Red to everybody out there. I see Rick and Andrew. Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. And Danny, how are you doing this morning, man?
Good. I stayed up for the basketball game, which was started at 9:30 my time, and I wish I just went to sleep. So, I mean, I'm doing okay. The basketball team disappointed me, but I kind of expected it after the quick turnaround from Tuesday's big win over Purdue.
I'm not going to say I expected it. I was worried about it, but I thought once they they were down 14-2 and then they got it back to like 50-50, and I thought, okay, like let's just hit some shots here. Like Iowa's got to cool down eventually, and that just didn't happen. The defense was not good. Iowa, I mean, I know Iowa made a lot of shots, but when your opponent makes 35 shots and 30 of those are assisted, I mean that proves that you're not playing good defense, and your rotations are off. You're getting beat. People are having to overhelp and do different things like that. So the defense really let Nebraska down twice now, I would say, in the past week, particularly on the road. Not that it's easy to win on the Big Ten on the road, but the defense is going to have to, travel and be more consistent if this team is, going to punch its ticket to March Madness.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought the offense did okay. It was just a complementary piece in terms of the defense, and so we're gonna have to see if this is a trend coming up in the next, couple games, or if this was just a rough week on that side of the basketball.
Yeah, and it was a little strange. I think Nebraska only made 4 3-pointers on Friday night, where Iowa made 15. And, going into the game, if you looked at the stats, Iowa, which, I mean, they are a good shooting team, but they only averaged 7 3-point makes this year, and Nebraska was averaging 9.6. So pregame, if you looked at the averages, you would have thought that Nebraska had the edge at the 3-point line. So, the fact that Iowa did beat Nebraska there and had more points at the 3-point line, they're really, if you told me that pregame, there's no way Nebraska was going to win that one. So just sometimes the ball just doesn't go in. And then when you couple that, with the defense, struggling, you do have some ugly results. But also, 3 days after, beating Purdue, they had to travel through some terrible weather. So, they got to bounce back. I think Rutgers is coming up next. It is what it is. You're going to have some ups and downs, but still 3 quad 1 wins. And we should say, the bracketology, which came out yesterday before the loss, it did have Nebraska up as a number 9 seed, according to Joey Brackets over there at ESPN. So I'm sure they'll still be in the, they might drop a seed line or two, but it looks like that at least got them out of that, because they were in the first 4 in, last 4 out conversation for the last couple of weeks. So I think this at least boosted them out of that range for now, as long as they can avoid like a losing streak here.
And it was interesting because Josiah Alik played a big hand offensively, scoring 14 points in 21 minutes. And Eli Rice came off the bench and played really well. And so, it was good to see him. He was making a lot of shots, and I've got to see him. Obviously, we all have in minimal action this season. But last night, I really thought he put a stamp on his game and made it known when he was on the floor in a positive way.
Yeah, he did come on and made some positive contributions. I believe, he's a freshman, I believe, Eli Rice, and hit a big 3. He forced kind of a steal that, Josiah Leak had that breakaway dunk, and that really was forced by, Eli Rice's defense. So, it was good to see that. I think, I'm not worried or overly concerned about it. This league is tough, especially to win on the road. And, I wish that they would have beaten Iowa, but, it is what it is. And maybe we'll get a chance to play those guys in the Big Ten tournament. But sucks that was our only game against Iowa in the regular season and they beat us. But, whatever. Just have to deal with it.
At least there's football. But I don't. Yeah. But I'm something tells me that we may have the upper hand in football and for the foreseeable future.
I sure hope so. I mean, I am very excited about what Nebraska's done, in the transfer portal. Good to see you here in the chat, Steve. Go Big Red. We'll get back to Rick's question here, but yeah, I love what the Huskers have done in the transfer portal with their 6 guys because I've been talking about it if you've been reading HuskerBigRed.com, but Nebraska's going to be building through recruiting, like building through the draft and then supplementing in the transfer portal when needed to, and I think that's the way to build this thing long term. And you look at the way that Michigan's done it, I think that really goes to show that it's better to do it that way, the traditional way, than the Colorado way. That's not going to bring you sustained success, but you do need to fill holes in the transfer portal. I think Nebraska's done a great job of that. So anyways, long story short, do you think all the transfer portal or do you guys think all of the portal transfers will start this season? I'll throw that to you first, Danny.
I'd say that there's a very good chance. I mean, you look at Dowdell, I think he's probably your starting running back, honestly. When you look at the running back room, I think Nayor and Banks all have the talent to start this season. And then Thompson, just due to his familiarity with Tony White and the way he fits this defense in terms of being able to play off the edge and also, play aggressively and cover. I think he has a chance to start as well. And, when you look at these additions, they all have, the opportunity to really make an impact right away. And that's something that strikes me as, something to watch because, we had, depth at wide receiver, for example, last year, but it was young. And now we have veterans. We had, at the beginning of the year, a very talented running back room. Injuries occurred, and we were left to start Emmett Johnson, who did an admirable job. Now we have Dante Dowdell to kind of supplement that. Stephon Thompson, Luke Reimer, and Nick Heinrich are gone. And now he gives us depth at the linebacker position. I mean, these types of guys, fill holes that we desperately needed to be filled. So I do think they have a chance to start next season.
Yeah, I would say I do think there's a very good chance that all 6 of them start. Maybe Bly Hill, is going to have some competition in the secondary, but he's a 6'3" corner that has produced at the college level. So, I wouldn't surprise me at all if he worked his way into the mix. Micah Mazuka, I think is going to start. I think there's a reason they brought him on, and I think it was from Brian Munson of Husker Online or somewhere that it's not a sure thing that Ethan Piper is back next season. So I don't know if that has to do with the injury suffered at the end of last year, but I think that there's a reason the Huskers got Micah Mazuka. I do believe that both receivers are going to start, or at least Jamal Banks. And I mean receiver is kind of a little bit it's a little different than because guys kind of rotate in and out than more than you would at right guard per se. You know what I mean? But Dowdell, I definitely think is going to start. That's just I believe that they brought him in to be the guy, to be the RB1, and I'm sure he's going to win that over. I mean, he's a talented guy, and I think he fits this scheme perfectly. So yeah, I guess long story short, at least 5 or 6. Stephon Thompson, I think, is going to come in and start, day one, and really just I think he fits perfectly because when you look at like Luke Reimer. One thing he did last year is he was a really effective blitzer and bringing pressure. And I think Stephon Thompson, can add that, quality as well
really
to the
well,
linebacker group. Yeah. So I wanted to, so Sean mentioned a comment. I wish our fans and media would stop exaggerating. Don't get me wrong. Our portal additions will help out, but it's not like we landed 6 5-star guys. The portal class is ranked number 42. So I guess what I would say, to that, Sean, is for one thing, you need to look at the total amount of numbers. I mean, I understand the portal rankings, but I think that that's overrated a little bit. I mean, last year, I think Michigan had like their class was rated around 20th, and it was pretty impactful, seeing as they won the national championship, and all those guys ended up starting for them, basically, except, Hausman, who still played quite a bit. So I wouldn't get caught up in.
I wish we had him.
And who was number 1 in the transfer portal rankings last year? Colorado. And how many games did they win? 4. So let's not get caught up in that. That's not, it's, yeah, you can add 5-star players and all this stuff, but Nebraska doesn't need to add 15 guys in the transfer portal. They've got a really, solid roster. You know, they kept Bryce Benhurt. You know, it was like Matt Rule said with the Husker portal. You know, I mean, Isaac Gifford coming back, Nash, Ty Robinson. I mean, those are better guys than Nebraska would have got in the transfer portal. And I guess for me, why I like it so much is they needed a linebacker, you know, to start, and they got one. They got a starting caliber linebacker who's played in this defense. They needed a versatile defensive back. They got one. They needed a starting running back, or at least a starting caliber, blue chip caliber running back. They got one. They needed help at wide receiver, experienced guys. They got two. So, I mean, it's just they found positions where they needed depth, they needed experience, and they got good football players that fit what they want to do. So I really don't care what the rankings have to say about that, because more often than not, those recruiting service rankings, you know, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, go show me the rankings of all the Michigan recruiting classes that just won a national championship. And, you know, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham were both rated as 3-star recruits. And those both of those dudes are going in the first round. So 24/7 Sports and Rivals and all these guys, all these people who've never been on a coaching staff, like, I mean, I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about, but it's not.
Well, a lot of them don't. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, they're not gospel, and I'm not saying we do either. Like, you know, it's just that's why I trust more often than not. Like, if there's a debate between a player, between, you know, if Matt Rule offers him, and, you know, the 24/7 doesn't have, I trust Matt Rule and the staff over, you know, some dude at 24/7 Sports.
I agree, and I've always thought that way. You know, but I think, you know, it hasn't always been the case where we filled positions of need with, you know, quality players so quickly. And I think that's the other thing too. I think, you know, with previous coaching staffs, I won't name names, but we were a little slow on the uptake in terms of identifying needs right away. And I think that's the other excitement of it. We were able to land quality players at positions of need quickly, and, you know, we were able to land veteran contributors who many of them, you know, when you watch, you know, their tape and their highlights, they pop off the page.
Yeah, and I wanted to get to this comment from Steve, you know, before we get to your question here, Rick. Rule's building this program the right way, and it's already starting to show. And I think this is really important. That's one of my biggest takeaways from, you know, this whole Michigan championship, is that you don't have to be Alabama or whoever, but you have to build a culture. You have to keep guys on your team, right? And then you have to play football the right way. And I think that Matt Rule has done all of those things. I mean, if you look at Nebraska's one of the programs that's had the fewest members going into the transfer portal this year. They haven't even started winning yet. Imagine when we start winning, which is going to happen pretty soon. So I just think that, yeah, I'm really excited looking at this. I think it's going to be an entirely new era of college football with this 12-team playoff. I think, you know, I think that the kind of the distribution of talent, which is kind of going beyond those first 4 teams. Like, it's not getting so concentrated. I think we're going to keep seeing that spread out, and I think that's a good thing for Nebraska football.
And let's be honest here, it's also going to be a lot different with Nick Saban no longer in the picture.
Oh, definitely, absolutely, yeah. Kalen DeBoer I'd be worried about taking that job, but I mean, he's won everywhere that he's gone. But it's just, yeah, it's really interesting because he's never been in the SEC. He's has no ties to the South at all. But yeah, it was.
But I mean, he knows how to build a program, I think.
He does, and the infrastructure's there, and he'll have all the, you know, the recruiting and everything. But man, that was getting kind of ugly, because like when the Athletic reported that Tommy Rees was a candidate, I literally laughed out loud, because that guy is an absolute joke. Like, he should not be, like, the fact that he's even mentioned, he should be fired after the Rose Bowl. Like, he got coached circles around himself. I mean, if Tommy Rees was actually a candidate for, like, Scott Frost would be a better candidate than Tommy Rees. Like, my God, I laughed pretty hard at that. I mean, that if he was actually in the top 3, then, like, they were desperate for Kalen DeBoer yesterday. So good for them. I guess they got it done, because that would have been an embarrassment to replace Nick Saban with Tommy Rees.
Yeah, I don't think Alabama is going to return to the Mike Shula days, but we'll see. I mean, you're seeing
that'd be glorious, though.
That would be glorious, and you're already seeing, you know, some players enter the transfer portal. So, like I said the last time we did a show, I'd be interested to see if Nebraska kicks the tires on any of those guys.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, the receiver just went into, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who caught the touchdown at the end of the season just went in the portal. Oh, of course, I think he already got projected to Texas. So, I mean, woohoo.
A lot of
That's,
Washington guys obviously left too.
yeah, a lot of Washington guys. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Nebraska, I do, they could maybe add a few guys here or there, but and I know everybody wants to ask about the quarterback. But anyways, what would to Rick's question, what do you think the reaction would be if Danny K beat out Dylan R at QB starting job? I think that would be wild. I'm not saying it's impossible because I really think that Daniel Kalen's a good quarterback, but that would be crazy. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think that Dylan Raiola would sit and be the backup. I think he would probably transfer.
I was going to say, I think for the pecking order of the program and the harmony of all involved, I don't see that happening right away.
Yeah, shock would be that would
Yeah.
be a shocker. That would be. I'm trying to think of what's like a famous quarterback competition where something like that happened. I mean, that'd be like, yeah, Brady beating out Bledsoe or something. Like it would be
Although Bledsoe's
something.
arteries literally exploded, so I don't know.
Well, that's true, yeah. And so I mean, yeah, you're right. Okay. But I'm
So
just
I
trying to
don't
think of,
know. I'm trying to think.
I just can't think of one where there's a, kind of the favored son. Well, I guess, the one that I could say, although it's a little bit of a different situation, but it maybe is like the Tom Brady, Drew Henson when Brady was at Michigan, because Drew Henson was the 5-star, but Brady had been there for a couple of years. They weren't in the same class. So it's kind of but yeah, shock would be a good word for it, Mitch. I don't see it happening though.
Yeah, that's a huge impact, part of it too. And I have to wonder, if Dylan Raiola has a really good season. I think that will elevate this program even further, and I'll be interested to see how Raiola's success ties to the caliber of recruits we land in the program.
Yeah, Crouch versus Newcomb. That was an interesting one. Yeah, maybe Bobby Newcomb didn't quite work out at quarterback the way that everybody thought that he was going to, but still ended up being having a pretty successful career. And yeah, that 1999 team, that they should have won the national championship. If the 14 playoff, I know we said this I think last week, but if there was a 14 playoff, well, I'll say this. I think if there was a 14 playoff, I think Nebraska wins the championship in 94, 95, 96, 97, 99. So you can call me a homer, but I think Nebraska had, I mean, maybe not 96 because that Florida Werfel team was pretty good, but man, I don't know. Just give us another game against Texas, and there's no way we lose that one. So that's my thoughts on it.
Hey, that might happen in next year's playoffs. So
maybe, I mean, yeah, like it's because here's the thing is like, yeah, is it insane for Nebraska to, for us to talk about the 12-team playoff? I mean, maybe a little bit. Like I get it. They haven't even had a winning season, but
yeah,
you don't have to go like 12-1 now. You just have to win like 10 games and you're in the mix, depending on, who you beat and but if you're any team in the Big Ten, if you go 10-2 next season, like 50, you got a better than 50% chance of being in the playoff, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, you also, even if you don't make a far in the playoff, that's something you can sell as, what have you done recently, to recruits. And I think that goes a long way too, because, let's be honest here. I mean, we all care about the 90s, but the recruits don't. None of them were even born at this point in the 90s. So it's about what have you done for me lately? And that would certainly be a big, step towards, showing that you're having success in building the program.
And I think that's part of the reason why things did get so concentrated for a while in that 4-team era, because it was like, okay, from a 5-star, major recruiting perspective, it was like, okay, who can get me to the draft and who can get me to the playoff? And there was like 5 teams that, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and outside of those teams, there wasn't really a guarantee. And now you look at over the last 2 years, I mean, yeah, Georgia made the championship game last year, but the other 3 teams that made it, TCU, Washington, Michigan, that's not somebody that 5 years ago anybody would have predicted was in a championship game. So the idea that it's not that far-fetched for, a team like Nebraska or a team, I'm trying to think, even like a USC who hasn't been there in decades, it's not that far-fetched for a lot of programs to get there and enjoy the kind of success they've never had before. And for the first time ever, like literally for the first time ever, we're going to decide the college football national championship truly on the field from a 12-team perspective. Because yeah, people could sit there this year and say, oh, Georgia, Georgia might have been the best team. Like, we're not going to have to worry about that anymore because Georgia would have been in this playoff and we would know. So I think it's going to be great for college football. And I think it's going to be great, like you said, Danny, from a recruiting perspective, because it's going to allow a lot more teams to say, hey, like, you can come here and play, you can get your NIL money, and you can go play in the playoff, and you can be a hero instead of just being another guy at Georgia, which is basically what Dylan Raiola, he made that choice. So I think a lot of others will make that choice too.
Yeah, and I think it also gives you kind of a benchmark, especially if you make it on where your program is at, and it offers a chance to kind of assess what you need to get to that national championship. Whereas with only a 14 playoff, you and a bunch of other programs obviously were left out of the picture, and it's easy to watch these games and say, oh, Nebraska needs this like Michigan has, so we can get there. But now that you're going up against playoff type competition, you can truly assess what made your opponents great and see if you can implement that into your program.
And then the other thing, the other big I guess elephant in the college football room is, Jim Harbaugh still has a decision to make. And, I like Sharon Moore, but he's not Jim Harbaugh. So, I mean, if Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL, literally within a span of the week, you've lost, I would say, 2 of the top 3 coaches in college football. Because in my opinion, before Nick Saban retired, it was Saban, Kirby Smart, and Jim Harbaugh, and then a huge, gigantic drop off, like a massive cliff drop off to the next person. So you have 2 of those 3 guys potentially not on the sidelines next year. So that's a pretty big change. So I mean, Georgia's still out there, but outside of that, there's a pretty big power vacuum right now that could potentially take place in college football next season. Not that I'm predicting what Jim Harbaugh, I don't think anybody can predict what Jim Harbaugh will do, but if he does leave, and then from a Big Ten perspective, you're looking at the 2 teams that just made the national championship in your conference. Both of them are starting over with new head coaches. So it's kind of a not a bad situation, I would say, for a team like Nebraska, just kind of laying in the weeds, building themselves up.
Although Ohio State is loading up, very good, very active in the transfer portal and building the program over the past couple of weeks. So I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a little bit.
And they always will be. I mean, Ohio State has always recruited better than every other program in the Midwest, including Michigan and Notre Dame. I mean, that's not new. So yeah, they're always going to have incredible talent, and they are loaded up for next year. But my question there is, like, yeah, they got the kid from Ole Miss, and they got Henderson, and they got Will Howard, but can Ryan Day actually be disciplined enough to run the ball? It's kind of like Mike McCarthy when he has a team that's good enough to run the ball in Dallas. He's got a pretty good running back, but he just can't help himself throwing the football 40 times a game. And I'm just not sure how that, I see what Ohio State's trying to do. And I think if Ryan Day can be disciplined enough, they're going to be really tough because their defense is incredible, but we'll see. We'll see if he can not throw the football 40 times a game, and that's, coaches just have for some reason, they have a hard time with that. And that's one thing I like about Matt Rule. And I think it's from the NFL perspective too, knowing that to really win championships, you have to have a great quarterback. You have to be able to run the football, and you have to be good on both sides of the line. Like, those are 4 things that you can't waver on to win championships.
Yeah, and you also have to be disciplined in terms of penalties and clock management. I mean, we saw this year, Mario Cristobal in Miami, Matt Rule. I mean, clock management and how you utilize your timeouts and situational football can either make you or break you. Mm-hmm. And that's a big component too, because I believe that Ryan Day struggled down the stretch last year with clock management in some instances as well.
Or even just, fourth downs, you know what I mean? It just, there was a lot of instances in that Michigan Ohio State game, 2 or 3 fourth downs where he, just didn't go, and it made no sense to me, and I'm not sure why he didn't go for it. So there's a lot of, whether it's that, kind of going for it, and you do have to be careful with that, because like we saw in the championship game, that hurt Michigan. They went for it on the 4th down late in the second quarter. They got stopped. Washington turned around. So it does work both ways. But if you have a championship team, you really have to be aggressive in coaching it. And I hope that if Matt Rule gets to that situation, he'll he'll be an aggressive coach. But I really like what Nebraska's done back to what they, the transfer portal and kind of filling these different needs going into the spring. And I just really, man, I look at this roster, I don't see a lot of weaknesses. Like I really don't. I like the offensive line. I feel pretty good about I feel like the offensive and defensive lines are, probably I would say in the top third in the Big Ten. Like, is that fair? Like, so we
Yeah.
got 18,
Yeah.
so I mean, that's, and you're talking about like, that's with Oregon and Washington and, but Nebraska's got players on both of those. I mean, Ben Scott, I'm pretty sure was, honorable mention all Big Ten. I might be wrong on that. But, Bryce Bennett, that's two guys right there. We just got a 20-game starter that was in the SEC in the Big 12. And, we have Grant Bricks
Two
and,
All-Americans. Yeah.
Gibson Pyle. So, I feel really, really good about that. Good morning, Stefan from Hondo, Texas. Lots of Nebraska fans in Texas. There's Nebraska fans everywhere, though. So,
you know what is interesting too is that we didn't even mention a walk-on like Alexander Ruggiero. I mean, I really like him, and I'm happy he was able to come on as a walk-on, and he I think is going to be impactful as well. And then you have a guy who I also liked last year a lot in Justin Evans Jenkins, who I thought played really well, and you have him, and you have a lot of depth there.
Yeah, definitely. Jenkins, Scott, and Maz will definitely be, salty on the inside. And then you've got some other guys that are, could be in the mix there too. I'm still interested to see what they do with, Turner Corcoran. Are they going to have him play tackle or guard? So, but those are good choices to have. I still, the tackle depth still worries me a little bit, but they've got like Gunnar Gatula needs to take a step forward. Corcoran can play there. If Teddy stays healthy, then I think they'll be okay at tackle, but so if there was
just don't commit penalties, Teddy. Please don't commit penalties. Yeah. It drives me crazy with his pre-snap penalties. Ugh.
Yeah, see, to me, I think if Corcoran's a guard, I think he'll end up starting over Justin Jenkins. But I mean, it's nice to have the.
I'd be happy with either. For the record, I'd be happy with either. I mean, I wouldn't be like, oh, this guy has to be a starter. I'd be happy with either.
Yeah, and then you have quality, some really quality depth. So, I feel as good about the offensive line as I have in a long time at Nebraska, really.
And I feel like they fit the style of their offensive line coach well. I think Raiola wants to play mean, and I think he wants to play physically, and I think he wants to focus a lot on run blocking and, fighting in the trenches. And I think, a guy like Pyle can do that. Preston can do that. Grant can do that. So they have the style that their offensive line coach wants, and I think it's headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and speaking of Raiola, did you see he's like ranked number 6, the number 6 recruiter, I think, for the 2024 class?
Thanks a lot to his nephew, but still, I mean, he was able to land a lot of good recruits in the summer, and then once the season ended.
So yeah, I agree with this, Mitch, about Corcoran, that guard is his natural position, and he's been out of position too long and bassed way too much of it because of the fans. And I
agree with that too, because I did that a lot. But I mean, it just drove me nuts. We'd have a drive with momentum, and then it would be a pre-snap penalty, and next thing you know, we're 45 yards in pre-snap penalties, and it's 2nd and 72, and I just wanted to yell at Teddy.
Yeah, well, and with Corcoran too, I think. Especially, I see some of that in Grant Bricks too. Like I wonder if he will be a better guard than he would be a tackle. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that if Corcoran plays guard this year, it can stay healthy. That would bode well for the offensive line and Teddy. I mean, Teddy's the linchpin because if he gets hurt, then you're having to move either Gatula or Corcoran out to left tackle. And Sledge is really a quality player too.
Sledge. Yeah, he's really good too. And
Presta Tamu, I don't expect him to come in, since he was hurt to play right away. But, he's another guy that I really think has a lot of I think he can be potentially like a right tackle, Preston Tamua.
Speaking of linemen, Nordine Nwili and Marco Ortiz are actually playing in the Hula Bowl today, if I'm not mistaken. So
nice.
So I have to figure out what channel that's on. I think it's on CBS Sports Network, but I might tune in.
Yeah, good for those guys to get some opportunities. Good for Nordine, try to get his NFL draft stock up. There's not going to be that many Huskers drafted this year because most everybody kind of came back. Probably Quentin Newsom. I feel like he's going to get drafted, but I don't know. Sometimes I'm wrong.
I'm trying to think. Maybe Anthony Grant.
I see him as maybe a rookie free agent, probably.
Because he is kind of old for the running back position, honestly, but we'll see. No, I'm just trying to think.
And then Omar Brown, I think, has a chance. I
Yeah.
think he'll get drafted or signed by somebody. Probably would it be more of a later round pick, but he played pretty well this year.
Yeah, no, I think he honestly, out of all the people that could get drafted this year, for Nebraska, I think Omar Brown is the best shot.
Yeah, I do think that the 2023 O-line class is legit, and that's one thing too. Yeah, there's not a lot of high-ranking guys, but like I said, that doesn't really matter to me as much. I don't. I do trust to an extent the 24/7 people in the rankings, but it's not the end all be all, and especially with offensive line coaching and just so much of it, is you're projecting what a kid's going to be, especially with what Nebraska's doing now is they're betting on traits. They're betting on athletes. So they're not looking at a kid and seeing what he is in high school and being like, okay, that's what he's going to be. They're looking at his traits, looking at his, how he tests, how he runs, what he does in the track and field, and they're saying, okay, this is what he's going to be. And that's what Nebraska's betting on. So, they have to be right in that, and I feel like they will be. And so I guess that's why I'm not so concerned about whatever the rankings are, whatever, because I just trust that Nebraska is going to do a good job of developing guys.
Yeah, and to the development point, I think it is going to pay off big. The legacy players, Sam Cook and Caleb Benning, and obviously Raiola and Quinn Clark. I think is going to be a name that we're going to hear a lot of, who I think is very underrated just because of all the receivers we have in the room. And there's a lot of depth at a lot of positions, and it's good to see some legacy players be able to slide in as well.
Pyle should get a rankings bump, but probably won't because I don't know. They don't care about football. They only care about the underwear Olympics over at 24/7 and On3 and Rivals. So, when you get out to actual football, I have no idea how Gibson Pyle isn't a 4-star. It's just
he's needed to be
me.
one since last year. This isn't even a new development either. He's needed to have a ratings bump for quite a while.
Yeah, he's been great. Yeah, and he's another guy that was a high school tackle that's really going to be a very good guard. So, at any rate, thanks for the comment, James. Go Big Red. Thanks for everybody who's commenting here on the chat today.
And you can go ahead.
I was going to say, Steve, rules ability to move guys' positions and their push on development. The rating don't mean much. Yeah, I agree. It's about who you trust. With the evaluations.
I was going to say you could say the same thing in terms of being underranked about Vincent Shavers or Isaiah McMorris or Pyle, for example. So I think there's a lot of guys like that, and I agree the rankings don't mean much, but it's still nice when you lay it all out to kind of see all those 4 stars, especially considering coming off a 5-7 season.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, they do matter. I think with I think it's easier to say, to look at the guys that are the consensus 4 stars. There's some of those guys where it's not that hard to look and be like, yeah, this guy's got legit NFL talent. I think it's those guys that are in like the 500 to 1500 range. I think there's a lot more. There's not as big of a difference, I would say, between the different prospects. So I think that's where it comes down to your scouting and those types of things. But I do also agree with Mitch. I love Caleb Benning. I think he's going to be so good. I think he's going to be, maybe not a first team All Big Ten player, but I think at some point in his career, he's going to be like a multi All Big Ten selection. I just feel like that out of all the kids all the recruits who are going to outplay like what their ranking is right now, like Caleb Benning might actually be at the top of my list outside of like Daniel Kalen, but it's pretty high. I think Caleb Benning is going to be an NFL player someday.
Yeah, he's got the mobility, he's got the instincts, he's got the speed, he's got everything you want for this Tony White defense, and I think it could translate, like you said, very well to the NFL just because how quick he is and, how alert he is on the field with everything going on around him.
Well, and think about the way that the game is, or where it's at today. You need guys that can cover like a defensive back, but they can also tackle like a linebacker. I mean, to have somebody like that who, can really truly be, kind of a mix between those two guys, because it's not like, I mean, Caleb Benning, we've seen him cover Davon Hall one-on-one, I mean, so he can cover and he can do different things. So I feel like I just really like players that, if I put him in the slot, he's not going to be, uncomfortable in coverage, or if he has to cover a running back or a tight end or whatever, and he's a great tackler, and he's just around the ball constantly. So I am really excited about what he's going to bring to the secondary.
So the Polynesian Bowl is going to be January 20th, and then the Hula Bowl is today. So those are some things that we can watch. I remember waiting up a couple of years ago. I think it was with you for the Noah Pola Gates commitment at the Polynesian Bowl.
Yeah.
I think this was 5 years ago now. So I do have experience with watching that bowl game, and I wish he turned out better at Nebraska, but I feel like Frost and his staff mismanaged talent all over the place. But anyway.
And then Malachi dominated, excuse me, at the
Did.
Polynesian Bowl last year. So we'll see what DR can do. That's why I want to watch the Polynesian Bowl, because he'll be playing, so that'll be fun.
Dylan Raiola and Dante Dowdell.
Yeah, I agree. Dylan Raiola and Dante Dowdell. I just think they're the best players. And, like if you guys, I don't know if you saw this from Jamal Banks after when he committed. I believe he told this to Christopherson of 24/7, but he was talking about, Raiola's throwing ability, because he did have a throwing session with him. And he said the only player he could compare him to was Sam Hartman. And, Sam Hartman is about to be drafted somewhere into the NFL. And, Dylan Raiola hasn't even played a down of college football. So I feel like that's a pretty good comparison. And I think that's one of the reasons why, Jamal Banks came here. Is he's like, yeah, this dude is legit. So, and yeah, I believe Carter Nelson is playing in the Polynesian Bowl. So
yeah, so we actually
I don't know if they're on the same team, but that would be
so it
interesting.
might be one to watch for Nebraska fans. Might be a glimpse of the future, because I think Nelson also had a good week at the All-American Bowl. So.
And then James, let's see. With the players from the transfer portal, ball control helps the defense out. Yeah, absolutely. Just because Dylan Raiola is a 5-star freshman and a super talent doesn't mean that, you want him throwing the football 35, 40 times a game next season. I think Nebraska very much is going to build, a run-heavy offense. And, I mean, he's going to be allowed to throw the ball down the field and try to make plays. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think that he's going to be – I think this is going to be a 50-50, a very, very 50-50 offense. And I think they're going to try to give him play action opportunities. I think they're going to try to keep him in manageable situations, not third and longs, like you would do with any quarterback. But I just think the way that they manage him and, all that type of stuff, I don't think they're going to put too much on his plate. I do agree with what, Mitch is saying. I do think that he is going to look very good, like an NFL prospect, but I still think that there is still a jump to the Big Ten. And, but I could be wrong. He could be better than, it would not surprise me if he was an all Big Ten player next year, like third honorable mention, third team all Big Ten.
I take that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying first team or anything, but, or newcomer of the, like, it would not shock me at all if he was Big Ten freshman of the year, like not one bit.
No, I mean, he's got the talent. He's got the arm, he's got the accuracy, and he has a whole lot of speed to throw to.
And it's not like it's not, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that, because Jameis Winston was a redshirt freshman, when he came in. I'm trying to think of true freshmen that have come in and kind of taken things. I mean, Caleb Williams did, he took over for Spencer Rattler halfway through the season, and he was pretty darn good. I mean, he was even getting some Heisman conversation that back in, I think that was 2021. So, good enough to win 8 with our schedule. Oops, sorry about that.
No, I got it. Yeah. And I'll upgrade that. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. The schedule's not as hard as we thought it was going to be, so yeah, I definitely think there's an opportunity. I mean, they could have won 8 games last year if the quarterbacks just weren't totally, didn't fall apart. I mean, however many they led college football in turnovers at the quarterback position by a wide margin. I mean, we don't have to say much more than that. The defense was off the charts. That was the funnest defense. That's as fun as I've had watching a Nebraska defense since Bo Pelini was the coach, and like the early Pelini years, like the Big 12 Pelini years, not when we were giving up like 70 points to Wisconsin every game.
Although I have to say the Jonathan Taylor running display in 2019 actually was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen because he just gashed through our entire defense.
Yeah, that was not fun, but yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully that stuff. I feel like that's not gonna, that type of thing's not gonna happen anymore. Not that it ever, you're gonna have bad games, and Michigan did run it down our throat pretty well last year, but not like Wisconsin did. Not like ripping off 70-yard runs where we couldn't get the guy on the damn ground. That was embarrassing. But
Wisconsin and Minnesota. I can't for the life of me remember their names right now. One was playing with the Carolina Panthers for a little bit, and the other one I don't believe or maybe he got drafted. I'm gonna look it up, but their two running backs that they had during the Frost era, they absolutely tore us up every single year.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember who it was though, but yeah, I'm hoping that Dante Dowdell is that for us, because we haven't had like a dog at running back, or just like a I just really can't. I mean, maybe since Amir, has it been that long? I'm just trying to think of the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it hasn't that
Scott
long.
Frost, we had a Zigabo the first year was like
Rodney Smith and Mohammed Ibrahim. That's who it was.
Oh yeah, Rodney Smith rolled us. Yeah, I know exactly what game you're talking about.
It was raining, October. Yeah, they gashed us.
Yeah. Well, that's happened a lot, but I feel like that we have the team to hopefully gash some people, and I don't know, man. I just really like our team, and I like our offensive line, and I just feel like that. I mean, it is kind of annoying because this is like where we sit every offseason. We're like, yeah, we're super excited, and for all these reasons, and then it just gets crapped on. But I really believe it's going to be different this time, you guys. I have to believe it. We have the quarterback now. We've never had that before.
I was just thinking, I just remember watching Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins, and the college game day came, and everybody was so excited, and then we just got absolutely
Dwayne Wade was there.
What's that?
When Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union were there, and we just got embarrassed. Oh, that was so bad.
It was one of those seasons where you hated it as a Nebraska fan, but you loved watching the opposing players because they absolutely had field days against us. Let's hope he just stays healthy. Staying healthy would be a good start. I mean, I feel like talk about getting our hopes up every year. I feel like we talk about Irvin as a key factor every year. Then unfortunately he gets hurt. I'm not trying to bash him, but it seems like he gets hurt more often than not, and it sucks because I believe he's a good running back, but injuries have just slowed him down.
Yeah, it would be nice if he was able to stay healthy, because then it would be you'd have two guys that are 6'2", two in that big range, and then you'd have Emmett Johnson and Ramir Johnson. So I feel like that would be a nice combination of guys to have. So we'll see how it works out. I mean, the spring will be very interesting to see how that battle works out, and I'm just excited to see Dante Dowdell in there. I really feel like he has a chance to be really good. I mean, just I'm trying to think back, and it's been a long time since we've had a really good running back. Like I can't remember the last time Nebraska's had a running back go like 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, and I feel like Dante Dowdell is that kind of player.
This is a good question. I'm gonna say I don't know on this one. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Have you?
I haven't. No, I have not heard anything at all. I believe there was some talks last weekend with Holgerson, and is still talk about him being an analyst or whatever. He doesn't. Houston's still paying him because they just fired him. So I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. I mean, I really do think they need a quarterbacks coach. I'm not saying that Satterfield doesn't needs the play calling stripped away, but I just think that they need somebody. I think it would be beneficial if he could manage the entire offense, and then you have somebody else that can be there, really giving these quarterbacks the coaching that they need. Because with two freshmen and another guy that really could use some better fundamentals and Heinrich Harburg, I do think that it's imperative that they get a dedicated QB coach that's not Marcus Satterfield.
And I think Holgerson lives in the Nebraska area now, so maybe. How do we keep out from leaving me out of spring? He's not happy right now and is exactly hiding it. Well, I think it might be another AJ Allen situation come the spring, and I wouldn't be surprised if he left, honestly.
Which, it's disappointing. I'm not sure how you keep him happy other than you're going to, he's going to get the chances to compete like anybody else. And
well, I don't blame him for not being happy either, for the record. I mean,
I get it, but look, I understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, like, even if Nebraska believed in Emmett Johnson as their starting running back, they still have to add somebody because there's no reliable depth on this team right now. Like, you can't sit there and go into the season being like, hope Gabe Ervin stays healthy to be the number 2, hope Ramir Johnson stays healthy. Maybe Quentin Ives can play. Like, you can't make it through a Big Ten season with one running back. You just can't, especially not a running back like Emmett Johnson's 185 pounds. I mean, it's just not going to happen, man. Like, if you try to give Emmett Johnson the ball, 20, there's a reason why Nebraska wouldn't give him the ball 20 times a game last year, no matter how productive he was, because he won't last. He just won't last. And I'm like, you can come at me for that if you want to, but that's not, Blake Corum didn't make it through. Michigan tried to do that with Blake Corum and he broke down. So it's not, that's the best running back in college football.
Although, to be fair, they gave Heinrich Harburg, 25 carries a game, and he was hurt by the end of it too.
Yeah, and he didn't. Yeah, he broke down too. Like, it's just, even if you somehow make it through the season, like, without missing a bunch of time, like, you're not going to be at your best. And I don't think Dante Dowdell's the guy you want to give the ball 20 times a game to.
No,
I think so that's why, like, I get where you're coming from, Emmett, but I hope that he lets it play out in the spring, because I do think he's going to have a big role. I definitely see him getting, even if Dowdell's the starter, I still think there's still a world where Emmett Johnson gets double-digit touches, every game. And I'd love to see him throwing the football a little bit more. I think that could definitely be something we take advantage of more next season. But you need more than one quality running back. So, if Emmett Johnson leaves, then we're right back in that same situation of needing more depth, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him gone. I honestly thought when the Randolph Kapai news was announced that he was going to the transfer portal, I thought Emmett Johnson was going to be the guy that announced he was leaving. So we'll see. Yeah,
and I have no idea what the transfer portal rules now, because it seems like people are just still going in there. I believe there are some different rules for like Michigan and Alabama players, but I don't believe that Emmett Johnson would be able to transfer at least until the spring. So we'll see. There's plenty of time. But yeah, if he does leave, then I would say that Nebraska would be looking for another running back in the spring portal window. So we'll see what happens there, but hopefully he sticks around. But at any rate, I do like where the running back room is with Dowdell, and he averaged like 5 yards a carry last year for Oregon. He's coming from a big time program. So it's like, I get why Emmett would be frustrated, but you can't say no to that commitment if you're Nebraska. You have to do what's best for the team, and that's what they did. So
I agree. I agree.
But at any rate, yeah, in terms of other names, I guess Glenn Thomas, I believe he's on staff with the Steelers right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. He's the other guy that has been just not mentioned at all. It's just he's been mentioned mostly because he's done it with Matt Rule so many times before. So I really don't know if it's not going to be like Holgerson, if it's not going to be Glenn Thomas. I have no idea who it is, but Matt Rule's, made some. Tony White came out of nowhere. Nobody was really talking about Holgerson, that before Matt Rule kind of reached out to him. So I feel like he's got a plan one way or another, and we'll probably know what that plan is fairly soon. Winter workouts and all that stuff are coming up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and next thing you know, it's going to be spring practices and stuff like that. So I'll be interested to see what comes out of winter workouts and how much we learn from those practices and things like that leading up to spring ball, because I do think there will be some nuggets of information that they always report stuff that gets the fans excited, but I'll be interested to see how they evaluate, meaning the reporters, this current group?
So Steve, I haven't seen anything about Emmett. What's his issue? Well, the issue, I think obviously he probably feels he should be the starting running back, and he probably doesn't like the idea of Nebraska basically recruiting somebody over him. I mean, you can say what you want to say about it, but that's how he has to view it. And, this is a, blue chip running back, and all that type of stuff. So,
Thank you, James. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, James. Appreciate that, man. Thanks for the super chat. But yeah, and then going from starter to third string, I would say that's probably I don't know if he's going to be third
It would
string.
be
I mean,
number
Gabe
2,
Ervin,
hypothetically, if Emmett was third string.
I think he's saying Gabe Ervin would probably be my guess.
See, I would put Emmett before Gabe, honestly, but I could see a situation where Gabe goes, before Emmett, just because of his, veteran experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. They're just, to me, they're different types of backs too. You have Gabe Ervin's kind of that power back where Emmett Johnson, can do some different things. So I really like that. I like that mixture, and I do definitely want to see, like I said, Ramir Johnson. I would love to see him throwing the football more. And when you have a more accurate quarterback, I feel like that makes it a lot easier. Like I feel like when you have receivers too that can threaten the field a little bit more, like Banks and with Nayor. I just feel like Ramir John. I mean, we talked about that with Whipple like 2 years ago, how he could be like a Brian Westbrook, and then they never threw him the ball. Like I remember when he had over 100 yards in that game against Michigan. So it's like
the drop against Illinois, I think, honestly, unfairly sealed his fate.
That was bad, but
that was bad. But when you come off the bench cold and you're used to starting, and they expect you to make a big play right away, then it's a little bit tough. And they totally mismanaged. Ramir Johnson has been mismanaged his entire Nebraska career. So
he has been. Could see slot receiver time. Yeah, he catches the ball really well. He reminds me. There's this. I can't remember. There's like a guy that used to play for the Redskins, and because he was always on my fantasy football team, and I can't remember his name now, but he never like got the ball more than like 10 times per game, but he would always run like 4 or 5 times for like 40 yards and catch like 5 passes for like 40 yards. That's what I could see Ramir being. Just he's not a guy that
this guy on the Redskins was a receiver.
He was like a receiver / running back.
Huh. I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, and I just can't remember who he was, but because I always played the PPR fantasy football league, so I would always look for those type of like third down, like running backs. To confirm the commitments and guys on campus, do classes start in a week? I believe they start. Yeah, I think it's like the 21st. I want to say somewhere around then. They haven't. The Huskers have officially started announcing some of their transfers, like Isaiah Nayor and Dante Dowdell. So those guys are officially signed. So when the program, like when the Huskers announce it on their official Twitter account or on their Facebook page or whatever, they can only do that if the player's officially signed. So yeah, those things are happening, and that's why you'll see like a commitment or whatever. When they say commitment, they just haven't formally signed the papers, but transfers can basically do that whenever they want. There's no specific signing period.
As much as I want Notre Dame to join a conference, I don't think they'll ever do it.
I don't know if they will either.
If anything, I see Miami coming to the Big Ten.
Yeah, I would say
the ACC is in trouble.
They are in trouble, and Florida State is on the warpath now. I mean, they are pissed, and they probably have a right to be. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. I don't think they were a top 4 team, but like I understand they did everything that they were supposed to do, and I also understand that they got whipped in the Orange Bowl, but they were also down 20 players. So like I don't feel like that's a fair, representation of what they could have done in that game if they were really trying. But at the same time, they didn't want to try, which I thought was kind of disappointing. Yeah, exactly. Because I agree 100%, Mitch. If they win that game, like they could at least make a claim to be national champions. Now, whether they get voted AP number 1, probably not based on what Michigan did, but they at least have the case. But now you can't make that. You can't say anything. You can't say, oh, we should have. They can't do what Auburn that year they went 13-0. They could at least say like, hey, Like they have a right to claim that they were the best team. Florida State gave up that right because they didn't care enough to play the game against Georgia, which I thought was disappointing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't know what Florida State's going to do. Does the Big Ten want Florida State? Because when we talk about expansion, there's only two places to go. You're either going to the SEC or the Big Ten, or there's no other conference matters. The Big 12 is a one bid league, and every league besides the Big Ten and the SEC are predominantly going to be one big leagues. You might get an extra bid in the ACC, maybe like Florida State and Clemson or something, but it's not going to happen very often because I just don't think that the selection committee is going to value their conference very much because they didn't this year. And when you look at the Big 12 and you lose Oklahoma and Texas, who's the best team in the Big 12 going to next season? Arizona or Kansas State? I mean, come on, like
Kansas State maybe.
It's a good conference, but so in terms of would the Big Ten want Florida State and Miami? I mean, possibly that would get you to 20 teams that would have you down to Florida. I don't know. It's crazy. Just combine the SEC and the Big Ten already and call it the mini NFL or whatever. I mean, that's what it is at this point.
Let's see. This is Colorado. Hopes it's them. Yeah. See, the thing with Colorado is, I'm not sure how long the Dion phenomenon is going to last.
Yeah.
I have my doubts as to the stability of the program, not just under Dion, but if Dion won't bolt for the next good opportunity very quickly. Because call me a hater or whatever, but he makes it very clear that it's about himself.
Yeah, and if they have a winning season next year with his son at quarterback, and then his son, he'll be looking for another job next offseason, 100%. So let's see.
Not always the case. I mean, the ones that you see that get reported on. Do you want me to get it?
I'll get it here. Yeah. So sorry.
No, you're good.
These guys are getting paid very well. This is Steve Bowker with a Facebook comment. These guys are getting paid very well with the NIL now. No one should be allowed to sit out bowl games.
I don't think they're getting paid very well because the ones you hear about are the ones with the bigger deals. There are a lot of smaller deals, but all the NIL money is not the same. The bigger guys get a large chunk of the change, and some of the players who opt out of the bowl game, don't even get any NIL at all. I mean, so I think, and I'm not trying to bash you, Steve, per se, just saying in general that I think it's a common misconception that everybody gets paid well with NIL, and that's just not true.
Yeah, I think Nebraska, I know the guys get a base salary. I don't know what it is, but they get somewhat like a base salary. But I mean, if you're a player that is projected to be a first round pick, I mean that's not that monthly salary compared to a $10 million contract. I think that's why they do, because really these games don't matter. I mean, if you were playing for a championship or, basically the Orange Bowl, if it's not a playoff game, it's essentially a glorified preseason game. So, I mean, it doesn't, it just doesn't mean what it used to. And that's college football's fault. So, one idea that I've had, I know people might not like it, but, they have these bowl purses and they're saying, oh, this program gets, $1 million. How about you make it where you give the winning team of every bowl game and you let them split $100,000 or something, or give them, you could make it higher based off the bowl game or whatever. But if you gave the players a piece of the pie, if they won that game, there's probably a good chance that more of them would play. Now, maybe not the top 10 picks or the first round picks of those guys, but some of the other guys, if they thought they could go get 50 grand or, 100 grand or whatever it is, I mean, that would probably be way too much, but you get what I'm saying. I don't know if that would be possible at all, but just a thought.
No, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I mean, that certainly offers a little bit more of an incentive, and I just think there's too many bowl games to begin with. Honestly, there's just too many bowl games, and they need to shrink the field down. I get that everybody wants to have a chance to participate in a postseason game, but there's just too many.
Well, and it's back in the early 90s, we'll go back to when I really started being a college football fan, which was 1991, 92, 93. I think there was like 12 bowl games or like 14 bowl games. So it was, you had to have a good season to get to a bowl game. So it was actually like a reward, where now it's like you can, you have teams that are going 2-6 in their conference and going to a bowl game because they scheduled four Sisters of the Poor, and they made, they got 6 wins. So it's like, I mean, I get it. It's good for development. It's good for practice. And I don't think the bowl games are going away. I know everybody who, is a college football analyst has been talking about this, like, oh, we've got to destroy the bowl seasons. You know who's not saying that? The people who run ESPN, because people still watch them. So it's like, as long as people watch those games, they will play them. I guarantee it. Like, I would love if they went down to like 20 bowls, but I just don't see it happening.
And let's be honest, some of the locations of the bowl games are pretty sweet, like Vegas, Nashville, Miami. I mean, there are some pretty good places to see a game.
No, the 12-team play, that's locked in. It's contractually done. It's happening. I believe, I want to say at least for the next 4 years, probably longer. What I think is going to happen is the 12-team playoff is going to be a tremendous success, and it's going to expand. That's my prediction. What I want to see,
24 teams, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Even hell, even if you went to 30, 32, I could see this thing getting like March Madness style at some point.
That'd be fun.
And what I think would be interesting, say if you went to a 48-team playoff, okay, which would be huge. I get it. Just humor me for a second, and we're already coming past time here, so I need to wrap up here in a minute. But okay, 48 teams, you get 16 teams get the first round bye, right? So then you have your round of 32, and then so basically that would give you 6 rounds of playoffs essentially, and so you could have all these crappy bowl games could each host their own playoff game, so in this world, because I know it's a lot of extra football, I would totally get rid of conference championship weekend. I just would totally obliterate it. I've never
been a fan of it.
I think it's useless at this point. When you have 18 teams in a conference, what the hell's the point? Bring back the co-championships. Each conference can decide, who their automatic berth is. But it's like, if the Big Ten has 3 teams that are ranked, but if there's 48 teams, it's not going to matter that much. So if you're like 7-5, you're going to make it. So like, I would cut the season down to maybe 11 or 12 games, and then just go from there and have, and you would play games like in your region, just like in the NCAA tournament. So you'd have to move bowls around a little bit, so there'd be more in the Midwest and stuff. It would totally change everything, but I don't know. It's just my crazy fantasy to fix it all.
Mitch is already on his 6th shoveling adventure here. Man,
dude, that's like one of the most depressing things in the world, when you go out and it's like freezing, you get all your stuff on, you work your butt off, and then like an hour later, all your work is covered up again. That's when it beats you down. The cold literally beats you down.
This is one of the few times I'm happy I'm stuck in a wheelchair and a walker, because I don't have to do any shoveling whatsoever, or else my ass would probably be out there too. So, I mean, there are some silver linings here, folks, but not many.
That's funny. Yeah, it's not funny right now. I don't know about you guys, but I'm in Montana. It's like -30 right now, so not a fun time. Yeah, I feel bad for the Chiefs guys. -23,
or the volunteer shovelers at the Bills game.
Yeah, those guys are legends.
That's a lot of snow too. How is our punter?
Do you mean who is our punter? Either way, our punter is Brian Buschini, and he actually is from Helena, Montana, which is where I am currently located, where I live. So
well, I think he was asking because Buschini was hurt last year, no?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, I think he was dealing with some stuff. I know he wasn't great at times last year, but I thought he finished the year pretty strong. I think he punted pretty well in that Iowa game. I don't remember that well though. I was like blacked out half that game.
I just remember there was a time when we had a punter who punted the ball 15 yards. So we've come a long way from that. I think it was 2019. I forget who the punter was. I can't remember, but
Brian Buschini, he's dealt with some injuries the last 2 years, but when he's healthy, he's an NFL caliber punter. So
I think
Yeah, I think he'll have a chance. He'll have a chance, I think, if he can stay, especially if he can stay healthy. So, at any rate, guys, I'm going to have to wrap it up there. So, thanks everybody who contributed and hopped on the chat today. We'll keep doing this every Saturday. We'll have another episode of our podcast on Monday. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Have a great weekend, you guys.